We are Russia's next target. Too many don't feel the urgency, and too many believe that time is on our side. It is not.
Who here is ready for war? We have literally just booted army cadets out of a military base to make way for 600 illegal migrants in East Sussex.
Well, buckle up, Britain. Isn't this just the most deliciously ironic plot twist? For 20 years, your political masters, the very same people who run the continent, have been whispering, nay, screaming in your ear that you're an irredeemable, thick-headed, little Englander if you dare feel a flicker of national pride. If you even think about securing your borders, you're not just a racist, you're a mega-racist. Your history? Shameful. Your flag? A problematic hate symbol. The national anthem? Tone deaf. The English countryside? Honestly, it's just too white. We've been forced to view the man who actually won the last World War, Sir Winston Churchill, as a villain in disguise, all while the police, the fire service, and our entire education system have been branded institutionally bigoted. We were told we are European, not British, that mass immigration is our strength, not a problem, and that the highest form of virtue signaling is cheering as 2 million people are imported into Germany. But now? Now, they want to dust off that old, threadbare Union Jack, shove it into your hand, and inform you that war is coming. A war like your grandparents faced. Suddenly, the same country they told us to despise and decolonize, the one they told us to feel perpetual guilt over, is the one they demand you line up and die for. Before we dive into this absolute circus of hypocrisy, let's be brutally honest, 98% of you watching this video are not subscribed. The least you can do is hit subscribe for a show that fights for you. Thank you. And so begins the grand performance. European leaders, from NATO chiefs to Labour ministers, are now hitting the panic button, screaming that we need to be on our war footing. They solemnly declare that our civilization is under threat, that our way of life will change forever if we don't rally the troops. But let's pause and rewind the tape just 2 decades. These are the same voices that worked tirelessly to dismantle any sense of cohesive national identity. They told us that patriotism was a relic of a darker age. We've watched them run military recruitment campaigns centered not on courage or national defense, but on taking a break mid-battle to acknowledge a call to prayer. We've seen the sheer audacity of an establishment that would literally eject army cadets from a military base in East Sussex to house 600 illegal male migrants, and then, the very next day, look us in the eye and demand we prepare for service. We've been subjected to endless, nitpicking debates designed to make us feel worthless. Every year, some well-meaning, left-wing intellectual emerges to tell us that nothing we hold dear is authentically ours. Did you know your full English breakfast isn't English? The bacon is Danish. The baked beans are Native American. The sausages? From Iran. Shut up. Just shut up. The message has been loud, clear, and consistent. If you are proud of Britain, you are a thick, small-minded, gammon-faced racist. Your culture is non-existent, and any culture that veils its women is apparently more deserving of deference and protection than ours. We have been systematically taught to feel shame, not pride, over our collective history. The royal family is too white, and we must constantly check our white privilege. The idea that Britain is a Christian country? Gone. Replaced by a dogma stating that multiculturalism is the greatest, most sacred good, regardless of the consequences, which is why it's Islamophobic to even mention the documented link between certain community groups and sexual exploitation gangs. Now, having successfully eradicated the very foundation of belief in king and country for an entire generation, they suddenly snap their fingers and expect the common man to fight. Fight for what exactly? A borderless, guilt-ridden, decolonized version of a state run by people we despise. I know plenty of people who would fight for the idea of Britain, but there is not a snowball's chance they would fight for the current regime and the political mob running it. The absolute cheek of it is breathtaking. They want loyalty from a public they spent 20 years calling bigots. The conversation immediately pivots from the philosophical crisis to the practical refusal, a sentiment echoed powerfully by the people watching and calling in. But before we get back to the politics of war, we must acknowledge the pervasive sense of financial insecurity that underpins this whole crisis of trust. People are feeling the pinch. The cost of living is outpacing their earnings dramatically. It speaks to the deeper issue: if the establishment can't even manage the currency in our wallets, why should we trust them with our lives? This is where the brief, but important, discussion on alternative value comes in. Bev Turner's conversation with Tally Money CEO, Cameron Perry, highlights a profound public desire for stability and control away from governmental fiat. Tally Money essentially offers a current account and a debit card, but instead of holding pounds, your money is held in milligrams of physical gold. The pitch is simple and compelling. Gold traditionally holds its value, having averaged over 11% annual growth against the pound for 25 years, tripling in the last decade. Banks simply cannot compete with that growth rate. But it's about more than just wealth growth, it's about legal control and peace of mind. The system is designed to allow individuals to hold their savings in a form of money that retains its value and, crucially, remains accessible and outside the clutches of constant government influence or devaluation. The CEO summarized it perfectly: people need to feel safe and happy about the money they have saved, and that safety must reside outside the state's reach. This financial mistrust acts as a powerful segue back into the political anger. The panel and audience reactions are electric, crystallizing the national mood of betrayal. One gentleman, Adam, didn't mince words: "Why should I fight for people running this country whom I despise?" He rightly pointed out that during the summer, the current Labour leadership effectively labelled millions of patriotic citizens far-right. The underlying message is one of misplaced priorities. While the situation in Ukraine is terrible, the primary duty of any citizen is to Britain, not a country thousands of miles away. The idea that conscription, some form of compulsory service, as introduced in Germany and contemplated elsewhere in Europe, could be forced upon the young men of this nation is a red rag to a bull. Adam's personal objection speaks volumes. He has a 16-year-old son, and he would do everything to prevent him from losing his life abroad for a conflict that doesn't feel like ours. The sheer gall of the ruling class is compounded when you consider the immigration figures. You expect me and my son to go and lose our lives abroad while 2 million illegal immigrants are here with our wives and daughters. This is the core transactional crisis. Why should the loyal, native population risk life and limb when the state has seemingly failed to protect its own borders and maintain domestic order? Linda's counterpoint introduces necessary realism. NATO's head, Mark Rutte, was likely wrong to use language suggesting a repeat of the attrition wars of our grandparents. Any future conflict would be sophisticated, focused on energy infrastructure, cyber warfare, and sabotage, a very different fight. However, she stresses that Putin's position is rigid, and a mindset shift toward preparedness is necessary. Yet, this only amplifies the original point: if we must be strong to deter war, then why has the patriotic segment of society, the very people most likely to enlist, been treated like dirt for decades? The establishment can't expect an uprising of patriots when they've spent years decolonizing the education system and slamming Britain's history as intrinsically evil. They've built an environment where the average man on the street has zero investment in fighting for this lot. It is the ultimate karmic backfire. The refusal to fight stems from the recognition that this establishment wants patriotism on their terms, not the public's. You're allowed to cheer for a jubilee or wave a flag during an officially sanctioned national event, but putting the same flag up in your garden is somehow a far-right indicator. They want the sacrifice without the identity. It's a toxic hypocrisy that has led to a profound, existential question: what on earth would we be fighting for? As the discussion elevates to international relations, Henry Hill, the deputy editor of Conservative Home, provides a critical analysis of European dependency. The criticism leveled by figures like Donald Trump, that Europe effectively free rides on the back of American defense spending, is difficult to refute. While the US spends around 4% of its GDP on defense, most European nations struggle to hit the 2% NATO minimum. European leaders are constantly outraged by Trump's approach to Ukraine, yet despite years of warnings, they haven't ramped up their spending to fill the gap. Now, with the potential for a less committed US ally, this geopolitical order is crumbling, forcing nations to finally confront their own defense negligence. The entire post-national governance structure, the EU aiming for a post-national identity, and the Council of Europe with its expanded, hyper-legalistic European Convention on Human Rights, ECHR, is under immense pressure. What began in 1948 as a simple "let's not be Nazis" framework has mutated into a codified constitution that trumps national laws, fueling the sense that democratic will is being undermined by a vast, bureaucratic superstate. Furthermore, the idea of a reliable special relationship with the US is dismissed as a fantasy that British politicians cling to because they want to write checks they expect Americans to cash. The reality is, America's true special relationship might be elsewhere. This forces the UK to consider an independent defense posture, which either means a return to a naval focus or a major, difficult shift toward a European military alliance, likely dominated by France, a nation whose own domestic politics may soon swing toward a Trumpish, populist right, proving that a congenial alternative to the US is not guaranteed in Europe, either. Finally, the conversation returns to the domestic rot that makes the call to arms so impossible for many. The staggering increase in universal credit claims for health reasons, rocketing by 1 million in a single year, highlights a society in profound dysfunction. Whether due to a genuine, unacknowledged mental health epidemic or an absurdity in the claiming criteria, where even anxiety can qualify you for benefits, the system lacks integrity. Why would a government that cannot manage its own welfare rolls expect the public to trust its ability to manage a war? This sense of betrayal is strongest in the voices of the veterans and the audience. They echo the transactional calculation: young, working-class white men, the same people branded racist, sexist, and failed by the education system, are the ones who would be asked to fight and die. Simultaneously, the military relies on the Commonwealth, e.g., Fijian soldiers, who often hold a far more positive view of Britain's history than the decolonized establishment does. But the most shocking calculation remains, the two-tier call-up. As Benedict from Dorset suggests, why would a young man leave his family to fight abroad when the very people who have been failed by the government, and the 2 million-plus illegal immigrants, remain safely at home? The possibility of conscription is not just military service, it's a profound abandonment. An unnamed veteran summed it up perfectly: why would soldiers do that when in 10 years' time, the current Labour leader and his woke cronies come after soldiers for doing their duty? The establishment has spent so long prosecuting and shaming its own heroes that it has forfeited the right to demand new ones. The country has been deindustrialized, the ability to build ships and armaments is gone, and the leaders are more concerned about net-zero tanks than national defense. The call to war rings hollow, not because the threat isn't real, but because the institution demanding the sacrifice has already betrayed the very soul of the country it asks its people to defend.